get in here. What is there a better way, more elegant way to say that? I'm joined for my last episode of Sundance 2019 by two incredible filmmakers who are both people that I look up to, but they're also very, very close friends of mine, and I'm just so proud of you both. So I want to introduce you, Chai Vasarhelyi. We've probably known each other for 10, 12 years through Summit series, but you were doing Used to Endure back then, which is Used to Endure, Bring What I Love, and then also did Incorruptible, which won the Truer Than Fiction Award, Independent Spirit Award in 2016. And then we covered Meru on my last show, BYOD, which was here and won the Sundance Audience Award in 2015 and was shortlisted for an Oscar in 2016. And if you don't know, the unicorn of a movie that she just finished not that long ago and produced and directed with her husband, Jimmy Chin, it is absolutely breathtaking, and it's called Free Solo, and it's broken every record, and she was just nominated for an Oscar earlier this week. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So she's no big deal. But she's joined by a legend, Amy Berg. Amy was a journalist and then moved over to the dark side, as we call it, the dock side. If you have a British accent, it works. With Deliver Us from Evil, your first film, which really was remarkable, and was nominated for an Oscar and DGA Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement. She also directed West of Memphis, which premiered in 2012 at Sundance. Prophet's Prey, which we covered on BYOD. That was an amazing interview. And that is all about FLDS, so it's very close to here. You should all see that film. Premiered at Sundance 2015.
Same year as Meru.
Yes, we were here together.
I know, and you're both on
We
the
were
show
fighting
together.
over John.
We were sharing John.
We're sharing
John Krakauer.
Yeah, he came in to your
Actually was
studio,
on
yeah.
with you,
Yeah, yeah.
but not on your interview, I don't feel like.
It was Amy's fault.
It was my fault. We invited you. You
let's
didn't
fight-
show up. I don't
Fight
understand.
it out. Let's fight it out afterwards.
That's right.
No, but John, there's just enough of John to go.
Okay.
That was his
Oh, wait,
life.
I haven't finished my intro.
Okay, fine.
She also did Janice, Little Girl Blue, and is here with an incredible film that I was so happy to see the other night. It actually has my sister in it, Rabbi Rachel Timoner, and it's about the Women's March, and it's really, really good, and it's called This Is Personal, and it's premiering on Monday. Yes. So, welcome to the show.
Yay.
Gals.
Thanks.
I called this panel From Vast to Intimate because with both of these films, we're taking on something. I mean, the Women's March is something that is really a revolution of our time, right? I mean, this is all happening, and this was the most incredible gathering, and you're in it from all angles. So it's at once you're really covering something so massive, it's millions of people strong, and then it's also really, really intimate with the founders and the controversy, and you're just deep in there, in their homes, in their kitchens, in their bedrooms. And that's what it takes to make great documentary, really. And that's what it takes to make relatable films of any kind, scripted or doc. And, obviously, I don't know what you know about Free Solo. We do have the trailer here, so we can just show you that. Why don't I do that? But, yeah, I mean, I knew Chai, I think before you met your husband, Jimmy Chin, who was a climber. And there's so much in this movie that is about, in a way, your marriage, or like you must have just been living this kind of, tell us about that just to start, and then we'll look at the clip.
Well, I mean, it goes back to Meru. So our previous film was the first film Jimmy and I worked on together, and it's his personal story. And in making that film, we fell in love, we got married, we had a baby. And I was indoctrinated in this outdoor world of extreme risks. And that film is so much about understanding the why people pursue such goals. What makes you go out and try to climb, like be the first person to climb a mountain? What drives you? And it ended up being a film very much about friendship and obsession. So with Free Solo, I mean, it was a different marriage of talents for us, where it really took two directors, and the risks were immense, in many ways, but it was so for people who haven't seen it, there's a love story that's part of the film. Like, we're in the middle of making the film, and Alex, who's the subject of the film, meets a woman. He was online dating prior to that, so I thought we had a comedy in our hands because he lives in a van. He wears his climbing pants when he goes on dates, and I never could really understand how he'd explain to a woman what he does for a living. I climb with no ropes, doesn't make me that excited. So he meets this woman, and they fall in love in front of the cameras because that relationship's kind of this revelation for him, and it's the first time in his life someone has the self-confidence to say to him, "This makes me deeply uncomfortable, but I'm going to try to love you for who you are." So this all goes to say that, yes, like Jimmy and my relationship very much is reflected in the film, more in just the empathy that we have for both of them. And it was always really hard because part of me would look at her and be like, "Run! Like, why are you here? Run! Like, I'm telling you, month 2 in the van's going to be so fun."
And he's such. If you haven't seen, if you haven't seen the film, he's such an incredible character. He's so odd, and lovable, but so odd. And we're all going to die, but just to know that morning, the love of your life could just fall off a mountain, and that he has to do this, even though you have a dream to have a life together. This is somehow more important to reckon with that. Her character is incredible too. Let's take a look at the trailer really quick.
Okay. So dramatic.
Chai wrote me and asked me or texted me and said, can you come to our LA premiere? And I just had a rough day at work that day. I said yes, and I didn't really want to go that night, but I didn't want to let her down. Whatever. Like, I show up there and I was just like, what? Afterwards, I just walked up, I was like, what? That was the most incredible experience. It really has everything. It's the highest grossing maybe independent film, per screen average ever, right? So 76,000 per screen.
Yeah.
And over $15 million at the box office. At this point worldwide, and climbing, might be soon the highest grossing documentary of all time. And it deserves it. It's incredible work.
Take the prop.
Incredible work. Yeah. And I want to get into it, but I want to talk about Amy for a second. You both took on these mountainous challenges. I mean, you just say, we all saw the Women's March coming together, but to say, like, I'm just going to go document that. I mean, it's Amy Berg, of course. So tell us about how you even began to do that. Like, did you start with Tamika? Yeah, how did you get into that?
Well, we went down to DC with a pretty large crew. God, it's so weird to do it like this. Anyway, and for me, what was really interesting leading up to the march was this discussion about women of color leading the movement. Because every time a white woman was trying to kind of take ownership over some part of the feminist discussion, there was a really interesting discussion going on around that. And as Tamika and Linda and Carmen were chosen as the co-chairs of the Women's March, I was really interested in kind of following that, because historically in the women's movement, women of color have been marginalized every time. So this was where I started. And going down the line, the film obviously ends up documenting some very high-profile controversy that Tamika's going through right now with anti-Semitism. So then it kind of became like, what is the difference between a white woman and a white Jewish woman for me as a filmmaker? And so that's kind of what the film is about. And so I kind of stayed on those two paths and watched the challenges of intersectional feminism and just, does it work? Does it actually work? And leading up to this incredible midterm election, I feel like that was what it was good for in some ways,
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the first clip from This Is Personal. You're seeing this as you're the first people ever to see any of this. Okay.
How can you stop in the middle of a Lana Del Rey song?
It wasn't my choice. I'm just sitting up here wondering why it stopped. Okay, so they're in a way taking huge risks as well. They had no idea how many people would turn out or what.
Right.
And you're like up there on stage, which is what I was hoping we're going to see,
Right.
as they're like, are those the people?
It was incredible seeing how many people showed up. Nobody
Right.
thought it was going to be that big, and then it was just going on for miles. And the energy on the street was so palpable. It was just such a moment in history. What you just watched actually it was a civil action. God, I don't remember the Child Separation March. It was just 6 months ago, I think, and it was another huge turnout for an important issue.
Well, it seems like that's the thing about the Women's March also, is that, and the women's movement, is we're not free till everybody's free. And there's a lot of people in this country who are not free in this world. But in this country, we have the dreamers. And I mean, tell us about that and the balancing of those issues within your film, which you do start out actually pre-Women's March in those
Right,
issues.
with Erica Andiola. Yeah, that is kind of the tragedy of our times, and it just is kind of a gift that keeps on giving for the media still, this whole idea about the wall and DACA and the dreamers, and these beautiful people who have proven themselves to be worthy of every right in this country are just getting ping-ponged by the political system. So we were there with Erica for 2 years watching her fight with her community and her mother, who is being threatened with deportation regularly. And so that was a nice kind of balance to the story, because she was also speaking at the Women's March. That's where we found her initially.
Right, and then Tamika gets embroiled in this controversy over Louis Farrakhan. Can you just tell us briefly about what happened there? I mean, he calls Jews, the octopus who have their tentacles around.
Termites, yeah. Well, the film is definitely right there. Our cameras were right there when this was happening. It's a really controversial moment that takes a very unique perspective to understand where Tamika is coming from, which I think your sister was incredible in sitting down and letting us film that conversation. But we just watched this story unfold, and it was this kind of verbal, spitting war, instead of actually allowing people to sit down and talk and try to understand that we all don't have the same view on how we denounce a person. And so
That's like the entire problem in our culture. Why we don't progress is the polarization.
Totally. So
And so that's what's actually amazing about that conversation between my sister and Tamika and Stosh.
Stosh Cutler.
Stosh Cutler, is the dialogue, the nuance of the dialogue, which you let run for, I think, 11 or 12 minutes.
13, yeah.
13 minutes. 13 minutes. We do have a clip of it. Let's do it. Let's look at it.
Facing a really vicious hatred. And it looks different the way that our communities are targeted, but we're both, the white nationalism that is being fostered in this country right now, it's aiming at both of us. And the NRA, right? We're endangered. We're both of our groups are endangered, and it's different. I'm not saying it's the same, but I think that there is something that we can connect on there.
Well, the pain is the same.
Yeah,
the pain is the same. The circumstances may be slightly, different, but the pain is the same.
What's interesting about that scene is it doesn't feel like the needle moves too much. Like what happens is, I feel like we come to understand as an audience, and my sister comes to understand that where usually she can pretty much convince anybody to do anything. She's very articulate and persuasive. And she's Senator Schumer's rabbi, she's very influential in the Jewish world and in politics. But Tamika keeps explaining to her that that there's so many people that would be in prison right now if it wasn't for Louis Farrakhan.
Right.
That he has saved so many lives, young black lives. So I thought that was really interesting nuance.
Right, and you say the needle didn't move
But
too
it
much,
did
which
move.
is, it moved a little bit. And I think this is part of our times, is that we want immediate gratification for everything. But just the meeting and just the discussion is progress. And I think that's why your sister was the perfect candidate, because she was willing to do this. She was willing to do this and get there, get dirty, and have the conversation. And she risked her community as well by going on camera.
She was so concerned about this. She was like, I don't know what you've gotten me into, Ondi. But no, I'm not going to give away the end of the film, but it actually did make progress for both of them. So it really is really interesting to see the dialogue like that. And then Chai, I want to talk to you about filmmaking. This is not true of your film, Amy. The filmmaking process is not in the film, but you guys made a choice to actually include your role as filmmakers. And I was asked that question yesterday about how does the camera change the action? In this case, a man has his life on the line. He's never successfully done it, right? He'd not done it with ropes at any time before he actually does it free.
No, he'd done it with ropes many times. Yeah. No one had ever done it without ropes.
Right. But
Yes.
he had gotten up there with the rope.
With ropes practicing.
Yeah, I feel like he fell so many times though, like at least in your film. It was terrible. It would be like almost and then,
Well, Well, his thing is that he practices the mistakes because there can be no surprises. He practices everything. It's meticulous. It's this idea that if you work really, really, really hard at something, you can achieve anything. If you bring discipline, determination.
Yeah, the jump from one.
Yes.
That one where he has to go sideways.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. The karate kick. No, it's a crazy scene,
Yeah.
but it's just about, Alex has to prepare for everything, so he prepares for the mistakes too. So he wants to know how it would feel if he did it, so it doesn't take him off guard. So yes, he falls. He visualizes the worst.
And he
it's part of his
also
training.
feels out when he can actually do this one time that's life or death, and he doesn't do it for a while, right? You guys are out there with your cameras, and there was this decision of like, are we interfering in his process or is this helping? Tell us about that.
No, I mean, it's the existential, ethical question that's at the heart of the film. This is actually what the film's about in some way, in that it's the observer effect, this idea that if by filming, are you likely to change the action, the scenario? And if we're filming, is he more likely to fall? We very much trusted Alex and believed in him and believed in his judgment. As you see in the film, he does turn around when it doesn't feel good. But ethically, you have to occupy that space and visualize what it would be like, and could you live with yourself to be there? And what it kept on coming back to for us was that Alex has thought more about his own death than many people in this room. He thinks about it on a daily basis, and he lives a life of intention. He lives exactly the life he wants to live. And there are many reasons why he arrived there. And somehow this idea of the kid who was it was easier for him to go out, he was this dorky, very intelligent, but scared and shy kid who was easier to go out for him and climb without a rope by himself than to speak to another person and ask them to be his partner. And this idea that but he saw that other people connected and vegetables are good for you, so he teaches himself how to eat vegetables. He'd never been hugged, but he's people seem to enjoy hugging, so I'm gonna learn how to hug. But he brought that same method, this kind of methodical, precise discipline to everything. And so we trusted in that, and we also felt it was very inspiring because it's this idea of his courage gives us courage. But in terms of the filmmaking, because there's this ethical dilemma, we created rules, certain rules. So our high-angle team are elite pro climbers. Jimmy, my directing partner, is a professional climber, top of his game, 20 years in the vertical world, probably one of the best risk assessment experts out there. The rest of the team, they're all professional climbers who have set records on El Cap many times, and they're also cinematographers. So we surrounded Alex with people who could actually empathize with exactly what he was feeling, who knew him very, very well, and as he did it, we practiced. So in the way that he had to know what the mistakes felt like, he had to know what the cameras felt like, and he had to know where they were. And they also kind of practiced along him, we were refining the shots. But it was this idea of the needs of the film could never trump the needs of the subject. Production could never come first. So the primary rule was that we would never be able to ask Alex if he was going to free solo El Cap. So just think about that for a moment. We were prepared many days, and to get up to the top, they have to leave at night. They sleep. It's not permitted to sleep on top, so they wouldn't really sleep on top, but they'd leave at night. It's thousands of feet of rope. It was a really big operation, and I could never live with that idea that we had put that pressure on him.
Of course.
But we still it doesn't let us off the hook, and that's why the filmmaking is in the film. Because, the difference between fiction and nonfiction, and like we all know this, is that you really don't know what's going to happen next in nonfiction. And should the worst have happened, like we would have the terrible task of living with that, but still making it that honors him. And so it's like, it was this weird thing that we just had to put our ethical debate right there in the film, and also like let other people feel what we were feeling, because it was so intense.
Yeah.
It's its own storyline. It's like,
No, it
it's
is
so
its own
dramatic when you're
storyline.
watching the cameras thinking about those questions. I mean, I think it makes it
Well,
more powerful.
We sort of started at this. The first thing you said on the show today was, why do climbers climb? Why do they take on this kind of risk? Why are they driven to do this? Why do I have to be the first person to climb this thing? And I mean, is it to have your life matter? Is it to, like, where did you come to with this? You're married to one of these people.
And how interesting that is. I would actually say that I feel like we all understand that feeling. Like, why do you make these films? And like when our subjects trust us with their stories, like it always comes, like this is just a more extreme case of the ethical dilemma present in any film. In that, do we trust ourselves to treat the subject matter with respect no matter what?
Right.
And do they trust us to do that? And
there's no rule book. There's no playbook.
No.
There's no God. None of us could write that for you,
Of
because
course.
every circumstance is so unique.
And you can't anticipate what happens, because these things come out of left field that you could never have anticipated. Like Alex's girlfriend, like that was a good example where suddenly there was another person living this with us, and was she going to endanger him? So I will never claim to be an expert on the why, but I do think that all of us who are filmmakers in this room, or have pursued something that you are passionate about and given yourself day in, day out to it, you can understand, and that's, maybe we don't want to live with quite that risk, but it's a huge, I was terrified making another mountain film. Like, there are different risks involved, and these are the risks we choose. So, yeah,
And two last questions, because I think we have to wrap up, but how do you manage marriage and a creative collaboration that's that close? How do you divvy that up?
I like the blinking. That's her thinking
Can I ask Amy a question while you...
Yeah.
No. Let her.
Okay.
She's ready.
So we had 2 children in the time of making these 2 films, so it's all a family affair. I remember telling Alex I was pregnant with our second child, and he was like, "That's great, I love kids," and I was like, "You've got no clue, man. Like, you have no clue." So
Like, I'll learn.
Yeah, no,
I'll get pregnant.
No, it's like our daughter is his practice hug. He prefers to do these events with her on his hip, and what that means for her, I'm not too sure. What that means for him, it's great. Like,
He needs an emotional support.
yeah,
dog, for sure.
she's like a 5-year-old doll for him, and with great, Jimmy and I are lucky because we trust each other absolutely in what we do. Like, I will never question his decisions up there, especially when we're filming, because he brings this insider knowledge to what Alex does, and I know he's assessing that risk and thinking very deeply about it. Likewise, when I'm like, we actually have to be in the van tonight, I know they're having a hard discussion, but I'm sorry, we have to do this. Jimmy won't question it. He knows. He trusts me. So it's that kind of applies throughout our marriage. The hardest part is the travel. It's the fact that we have kids, and if we're both on the road, that's really, really difficult for us.
Yeah, and when you're in the shortlisted, nominated phase
Oh my
of
God.
things, I remember asking you, how are the kids? And you were like, they're feral. They're feral. Yeah. So, and that's kind of what I wanted to make sure.
I'm going to
we
start
landed
crying.
on. Oh, no.
Where are the babies?
Wait. I was
FaceTime. Come on.
I was here at Sundance 15 years ago with Dig, and Juki my son was just
my
born
God.
the week I finished the film, and he was 11
He
weeks
is
old.
so
He's right
cute.
there. He's 6'3".
Juk.
He's 15.
So
He's-
cute.
I remember him selling DVDs.
He worked the merch table at We Live in Public at 5 years old. It provides our children with this incredible opportunity. Amy, you're a mother too. And that's kind of what I wanted to end on. We're all moms, and I think a lot of people feel, and we were just talking in the last panel, of like, you can't do both, or people are pushing off having children, and that's totally fine too, or not having them at all, that's fine too. We ended up having them. You have a son?
I mean,
A gorgeous
literally,
son.
I'm not kidding. I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but my son about 3 months ago called me from his car in Detroit on the way to a prison where he was going to do an interview. So he's making a documentary now. He's 21 now. So it's really scary. Like we're teaching them early.
Wow.
I know prisons. Yeah,
I started in
I know.
prisons.
I'm like, wait, you're going into prison? Like,
Oh my God.
Am I supposed to be?
How was
I was
balancing
excited
that?
and like nervous.
You have the oldest of our three kids, of our 5 kids. But
Yeah.
So how was it balancing that?
I mean, you do it. You just do it. You do what you have to do.
It helps
I mean,
with takeoffs and landings.
Like it really does.
The
But yeah, I
breastfeeding
mean,
thing.
yeah. But I mean, my son wasn't that young when I started. When I made Deliver Us from Evil, he was like 9. So I mean, it wasn't at that point. But you do what you have to do, and you give them the love that they deserve, and you pursue the life you want to pursue.
And
It's great,
they learn that their moms are people that are really dedicated to their work
Right,
too, and
right.
are driven to tell stories that are important.
Right. And they're the men of the future. They're learning about strong women firsthand. It's amazing. So,
Yeah, that's true. And you have the youngest. You're what are you juggling? 3?
I've got a 5-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy. And I was just saying to a friend on my way here, was like, I feel weird. I'm here. And John Cooper said this to me last year, he's like, I don't think I remember you not nursing or pregnant ever at Sundance. And I'm like, really? But it was true. Like it was like 6 years that I was nursing or pregnant or somewhere in between. And I don't know what to do with myself because they're not here. I think you can do it all. And I think that actually having a family for me really made my work in a way better.
prioritize.
You prioritize, and also decisions are clear.
Yeah.
It's very, very clear.
You make them,
That's right.
and you edit at home. I don't know if you guys did that. I ended up moving the edit bay home.
And you let them
that
sell
you
DVDs.
stay up till- yeah, you take them along, put them to work. That's for sure.
He was running sound last time, wasn't he?
Yeah.
What?
Zuke was running sound last time at the
He can
other
run
company.
sound.
Yeah.
He can run sound. I don't know. It's going to
Get
be
him to
interesting
work.
to see if he becomes a filmmaker. But I think it's like his 15th Sundance or something.
my
The
God.
funny thing is, they're going to watch your kids grow up. And people text me. They're like, "I saw Zuki. Where are you?"
Yeah.
All the time.
Right?
Yeah.
Is they're like our avatars or something?
God.
Anyway, both of you are just
Thanks.
such legends. Thank you so much for
Thanks.
coming on.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. In,
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yay.
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you. And check
Thank
out
you.
Amy's series on Netflix about dogs.
Yeah, I also say
yes.
that Amy's like the most prolific filmmaker I know. Okay? Just that, I really don't understand how you do it.
Oh my God. No. It's
Okay.
been like 3 years.
This has been WeTalk Sundance
My last
2019.
film
Thank you
was
for
like-
coming.
My last
Go
film was
kick
like
ass.
3.5